So what if World War III wasn't some far-off, distant idea, but something that could be triggered in just a matter of days? Today, we're going to walk through a really eye-opening, speculative scenario. It's based on a recent analysis that maps out a hypothetical series of events in January 2026, events that could push our world right to the absolute brink.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter, you know? The source material makes it clear, big wars don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're not a single explosion. They're built on years of broken promises, simmering tensions, all that stuff that just festers right below the surface.
So this whole scenario kicks off just a couple of years from now. The analysis argues that a dangerous new global game has started, and the driving force? A hypothetical policy it calls America First and nothing else, where basically the entire rulebook of international relations gets thrown out the window.
But how could things spiral out of control so fast? Well, the source actually maps out this chilling, day-by-day timeline that it calls the calendar of destruction. Let's take a look at just the first 11 days, where a cascade of actions could, hypothetically, destabilize the entire planet.
I mean, just look at how quickly things escalate here. January 1st, a move against Venezuela. By the 3rd, a direct face-off with Russia. Then, on the 5th and 6th, economic haymakers thrown at India and China. In just 1 week, this scenario paints a picture of aggressive moves against 4 major world powers. It's not a single crisis. It's this rapid-fire chain reaction that the source claims would create a global emergency like we've never seen.
The first domino to fall in this scenario is an act the source calls something we haven't seen in 250 years of American history. A U.S. president unilaterally detaining the leader of another country and then declaring himself its acting president. It's a move that basically says international law is out and one leader's will is in.
And just 2 days later, things get really tense. The provocation escalates dramatically. The U.S. Navy directly confronts another superpower, seizing a Russian nuclear submarine and its tanker. In this scenario, Russia calls it straight-up robbery on the high seas. This brings 2 nuclear powers eyeball to eyeball.
So the source portrays this as a very deliberate, multi-front strategy. Okay, so after confronting Venezuela and Russia in the Americas, the focus just abruptly shifts all the way over to Asia, and it targets not just a main economic competitor, but also a traditional ally.
And then, bam, the scenario switches to economic warfare. First, a crippling 50% tariff hits India, a major partner. The very next day, a blockade on oil shipments headed for China. The stated goal, as the source quotes it, isn't just to cut off their oil, but to cut off their oxygen.
So this all just looks like pure chaos, right? It raises a huge question. Why? What could possibly be the motive for being so aggressive on so many fronts at once? The source argues the answer isn't about spreading democracy or even about personal ego. No, it's about resources. And above all, it's about the money.
It all comes down to this number: 303 billion barrels. That's the estimated size of Venezuela's oil reserves, the largest in the entire world. In this scenario, taking control of Venezuela isn't a political act at all. It's a resource grab. It's like seizing the world's biggest gas station.
And this slide, this right here, really gets to the core of the source's whole theory. It presents the public reason, a bruised ego, as just a cover story. The real reason, it argues, is a harsh economic warning shot to any country trying to move away from the US dollar as the world's go-to currency. The source actually coins a term for this hypothetical figure: Dollar Trump. It argues these actions are part of a desperate all-out war to keep the dollar on top after its 80-year reign. So when the BRICS nations start trading oil in their own currencies, it's seen as a direct attack on American supremacy, which then triggers this massive economic retaliation.
But here's the thing: what happens when this kind of aggressive approach is turned not just on your adversaries, but on your friends? Well, the source claims it starts to shatter America's oldest alliances, creating a world where, suddenly, nobody can be trusted.
For 76 years, the NATO alliance has been the absolute bedrock of European security. I mean, it was built on this sacred promise: an attack on one is an attack on all. And for decades, Europe slept pretty soundly under that American security blanket.
But then, the source describes this alleged threat to Denmark, a fellow NATO member, a demand for Greenland, which is super rich in rare minerals, and that sends a signal that all those old promises are dead. It forces allies like Germany and Poland to face a stark realization they're on their own now, and it triggers them to start rapidly rearming.
They say to follow the money, but in a situation like this, the source suggests that maybe we should be paying attention to where the world's wealthiest and most connected people are going. It might be the ultimate warning sign. So let's just ask the question. When the ultra-rich start building homes underground, what exactly are they getting ready for? The source points to a reported surge in demand for these luxury, apocalypse-proof bunkers in remote places like New Zealand. They're not buying vacation homes. They're building multi-generational fortresses designed to survive a global catastrophe.
And we're not talking about a little storm cellar here. The preparations are wild. We're talking about supplies to last for years, their own independent air and water systems, heavy security, the works. The source argues that for these billionaires, the events of January 2026 crossed a red line, making a major conflict not just possible, but something you need to actively prepare for.
Okay, so this all sounds like some high-level geopolitical chess match, but what does it actually mean for the average person, for you and me? The source is really clear on this. This isn't some abstract game. A scenario like this would have devastating and immediate consequences that hit very, very close to home.
The first and most immediate shock would come right at the gas pump. If Russia or Iran were to retaliate by blockading key oil routes, experts cited in the source believe the price of oil could just skyrocket, going from around $63 a barrel to over $150. That alone would trigger a worldwide economic panic.
And that initial price shock, it wouldn't stop there. It would create this brutal ripple effect through the entire economy. You could see hyperinflation making groceries unaffordable. Soaring interest rates would crush mortgages and car payments. Mass layoffs would follow as businesses collapse. And ultimately, it could lead to a complete breakdown of trust in the entire financial system.
What the source concludes is that these hypothetical actions in early 2026 create a terrifying new reality, a world where one leader's whim can seize a ship, threaten an ally, or just claim ownership of an entire country. The old world order, with all its rules and treaties, is just over.
And so, this analysis leaves us with a final and pretty chilling thought. It paints a picture of a world sitting on a pile of gunpowder, with the super rich already heading for their bunkers. The question it poses isn't really if an explosion will come, but when. Has the match already been lit?